Hello, my name is Keenan Phillips. I am an archaeologist here at the University of Buffalo. Most of my research is done in Italy, where I work on Etruscan archaeological sites. Today I'm going to talk to you about the use of tombs as a source of cultural memory or social memory to basically reflect and create a physical embodiment of the social hierarchy of a group. What you see before you is a picture of what a tomb called the Cucumella. It is the largest tomb in all of Italy, technically, at least in the Etruscan phase. It's about 60 meters in diameter and 18 meters high. So to give you a crash course on Etruscan archaeology, there are a lot of different types of burials. On the top left, you have essentially what are urns, and then there are several different types of rock cut or buried tombs, and then on the bottom right, you have what are the large tumulus tombs. These are actually from a separate necropolis and are much smaller than the Cucumella, but they still have a very similar shape. The purpose of this analysis is really at a very large scale level is basically to ask the question, what's the relationship between the city of the dead or the necropoli and the living cities and their relation nearby? And then at a local level, again, can this very large tumulus, the Cucumella, be seen from most areas of the Acropolis of Vulci? Archaeology is the study of past peoples. To study past people, we need to look at their material culture because we can't interview them. What this basically means is that we look at their pots, their pans, their metal. We look at their housing and how their houses are structured and how they're built. We even look at how they set up and structure their cities. And one thing that often goes not exactly ignored, but often falls to the wayside is the geographic distribution. And how people move through a landscape or settle in a landscape or even use a landscape is kind of a unique thing and is a very important thing to think about when we can't ask them direct questions. So the Etruscans are an Iron Age culture in central and northern Italy. This map shows the sphere of influence, essentially. All of the little red dots are Etruscan cities. You'll see, if you look closely, that Rome is in fact labeled as an Etruscan city, and that is due to the fact that they are in fact an Etruscan city until they overthrow their kings or whatever and establish a republic. But I won't get into that. But they very clearly have interactions, and as Rome expands, the Etruscan League diminishes and becomes Roman. So the objective here of this project has really been to do a GIS analysis of archaeological material. And why that's kind of a unique thing is the fact that archaeologists use GIS programs quite a bit. But more often than not, it's done simply to just make a map of what we already know so that we can put it as a figure, rather than to do an actual analysis of any sort of material. And the key point really here for this is, does the Cucumella stand out in a neighborhood, a local neighborhood being around Vulci, or in general around Italy? And why does this matter? A lot of this has to do with the fact that this is actually my dissertation project, or at least part of, and that comes from the fact that the chronology that we use for the Etruscans is in fact a Hellenistic creation. It was created for the Greeks that we then took and placed lock, stock, and barrel onto the Etruscans without really any much change, with a few type changes, meaning Villanovan and Romano-Etruscan. There's no Romano-Etruscan Greeks, in other words. And that really doesn't work because the Etruscans are different people and therefore deserve their own chronology for start. But when we place a chronology on a past group of people, we're essentially giving them phases that don't actually exist in real life. They're just for modern people's understanding. And to have this modern understanding that isn't actually built around the culture group means that we have some interpretation issues. And one of these is, in fact, the Cucumella. Prior to the building of the Cucumella, there were essentially just these small urns. And then all of a sudden, the largest tomb in the history of the Etruscans is built, and will be the largest tumulus ever built. Why? Why do you go from a burial of small urns to a massive mound. Something changes, and that's a very significant change. The photo here is, again, Vulci. The study area of this project is the overall area of Vulci. I tried to give you two scopes here. There's a very small green dot in the center of Italy, if you can make it out. I thought I had a laser pointer. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this laser pointer seems to be working very well. As you zoom in, you get this large polygon feature, which is essentially the modern national park of Vulci. To be clear, this is the modern version, not the actual scope of the ancient city. Vulci was a massive trading port that's well known for its production, and it had continuous occupation all the way from the pre-Etruscans all the way through the Lombard period, which is as far as like the 7th, 8th century. So the methods of this project has started with the view shed, which is the goal is to basically understand what role the Cucumella has in the establishment of the Etruscan phase, meaning can it be seen from the entire plateau of Vulci, or is it really a much smaller area and therefore not as dominating of the landscape? And then after the view shed, the next is to do a proximity analysis to basically question exactly how well grouped are these actual tombs. Is there actually a grouping, or do they appear at random around this plateau, meaning they just can't? The rules are essentially they can be put anywhere you want, but you just can't put it in the city. So to move on with data, data is pretty straightforward. DEM is the key. I pulled this from an EU website for free, finally. My first few attempts, I actually ended up having to pay some money from the Italian Italian Geological Survey with much worse data. But this EU version, it was a very large data set. It was about 7 gigabytes in size and had to be consistently clipped down until it was a workable raster that I could actually open and not kill my computer with. Then obviously I needed viewer point positions from both on top of and at the bottom of the tumuli, basically to understand what was visible. Because it's one thing to say that it's visible from the top of the mound, and another thing to say that the entire mound is visible. The target is obviously the Cucumella, so I had to get the location of that tomb, the exact location and all of the heights and the diameter. And this comes from archaeological site reports. Geographic information is great. It's unbelievably useful. However, nothing is going to beat the level of resolution that an archaeological site report will provide, along with the specific day-to-day excavations and measurements. You have a person that spent, at some cases, years on a site, and geographic information just does not cover that scope. The other aspect of this type of method and theory is the actual theory section. And this is kind of the different portion of this project, because statistical or spatial analysis is important, but you can't really just imply a number to a past people and say, okay, yes, this is what happened. You have to have some sort of generalizing theoretical statement to really say exactly what this means. And the two here to take away are monumentality and social memory. So what are monuments, right? Monuments are something that you build for the remembrance of a thing. It could be a person, it could be an event, it could be your dog. Doesn't really matter, but you build it, you put effort into something, and it really only has a meaning to remember something that's either already happened or is happening or something in that case. And graves are one of those. And I'm going to say something that may shock a few of you, but graves don't serve a purpose for the dead. They actually are for the living. And this comes from the fact that, once you're dead, you're dead. It doesn't, if you're in a pine box or a really nice, tumulus, it's all the same. You're not going to know. And so these graves are actually built as a source of a sort of monument for the living. And this is where it's really key to think about, right? You have this photo right here that I've put up of the Great Pyramids, biggest grave monument that you'll ever see in the world, pretty much. And the one below that is Trajan's Column, the source of remembrance from a military conquest. And so it's that thing to think about, it's this idea to think about, right? We build these massive structures as a way of basically encouraging the people around it to remember something, right? So let's take this idea and transfer it back into Vulci. Why do you build a giant mount that's visible from everywhere? So what does the viewshed show? Well, to get into it, it really is visible from everywhere. The current thing that I believe will happen is that there are likely 2 to 3 areas that are actually going to be considered necropoli rather than, just random groupings of tombs. But the Cucumella is visible from just about everywhere on top of that plateau or acropolis, even from the Roman facing, which is kind of an interesting thing because that's a transition between cultures. The comparison of material culture found at Vulci and in other Etruscan cities really, again, shows that this tomb doesn't fit into what we believe the chronology to be. And by using this idea of social theory that has been established in the discipline, this hypothesis that the Cucumella was built for the purpose of remembering a person that brings social stratification into the region. Why do I say social stratification? Because you can't build a massive tomb like that without the assistance of a lot of people, right? You can't build, one person can't build the Great Pyramids, one person can't build the Cucumella. And I was a little frustrated at the fact that if you can see in the back here, there's a little bit of green area that technically you can't see the Cucumella from. Because of this, I wanted to try and see if this would be visible, if the statues on top would have been visible. And so I used a separate function called visibility, which is just another tool within that visibility toolbox to essentially alter the elevation of the viewpoint by 18 meters, which is the height of the Cucumella. And this is what it kind of shows. It does actually include most of the plateau now, and it covers all of the areas of known necropoli, and it kind of expanding and showing the domination of this total landscape, including down here where the port would have been. So this is a slide showing the comparison between the two. Next, I uploaded the 2 into an arc scene, basically to get an idea of what it would look like in 3D, again, to show you the difference here. And because I'm running out of time, I will skip to the next and show you the wonderful flyover. So because of our wonderful lab, I decided it would be cool to see what was going on. So in this flyover, you have the pink that is Roman and the purple that is Etruscan. And then that large pink block in the back is obviously the Cucumella, just to give you an idea of kind of what the landscape would look like. I exaggerated the features by 2.5 to really give you an understanding. Again, we're in Italy, so, not the most mountainous area. But as you can see, even with the 2.5 exaggeration, the Cucumella is definitely a little blip. All right, and that is the end. Thank you.